You join me here on Linear Fisheries in Oxford, where the initial intention was to come down and do some top tips for Mr. Penning and his new website, which is going to be hitting the screens fairly shortly. But unfortunately, we've come into sub-zero temperatures. It was -3 when I left home this morning, and that's been preceded by an influx of really cold rain. So the chances of actually getting a fish or two is probably pretty slim. The rods are in the water, but anyway, we've decided to change hats slightly.
I wish you changed your hat.
And I've fired down a load of questions, none of which Mr. Penning's seen, so I'm just going to rattle off some questions and hopefully make it a little bit entertaining as we go along. But anyway, Adam.
Hello, mate.
I'm going to start off by asking your full name.
Adam Penning.
No, sorry, mate. Your full name?
That's Adam Penning.
I've known you for longer than you probably can't remember.
Woody, don't start with this. Look, no one needs to know. Who cares what my middle name is?
Come on.
Heathcote, all right?
Love it, I knew it.
My parents thought they were upper class, even though I was raised in poverty, and they gave me a posh middle name. All right, big deal.
Adam Heathcote Penning.
Well, don't repeat it and stop laughing. They'll start laughing if you start laughing. Jesus.
Age, mate. How old are you these days?
Oh, God, they get easier, don't they? 42.
42. You look good for it, boy.
Ah, cheers.
Right, not referring to your journey from Essex this morning. Tell us, where did this carp fishing journey begin?
Right, well, I started off fishing when I was about 12, just through guys in my class at school. No one in my family fished, so I just went with it with guy Tony Clare. God bless him, he got me into it. I say God bless him, he's not dead or anything. Well, I hope he's not. I haven't seen him for 30 years, but yeah, so Tony got me into it. He came from a fishing family, and we used to go float fishing for gudgeon down on the River Stort in Harlow, and Nextwell Pond for crucians and stuff like that. And we sort of went around and had brilliant times through the summer holidays and so on. And then one day Tony rang me up, bearing in mind we'd never caught anything bigger than a chub, probably about 8 ounces. When he rang me one day in July and on the school holidays and told me that he had just caught an 8 3/4 pound mirror carp on floatfish maggots down at a lake called Campions in Old Harlow, I was as shocked as more shocked than he was. We couldn't believe anything could be as big as 8 pounds. You know, it was just so enormous. And so we were quite competitive, and I thought, well, I've got to go down there and see if I can do similar. And so I got my paper round money together, went to Mixed Tackle Shop in the High Street in Old Harlow, bought a ticket, day ticket for this lake, and the next day I went up there at dawn. It was the 26th of July 1985, and I remember every minute of that day really clearly. And after a very frustrating sort of few hours trying to catch these carp, which I could see but I couldn't catch, I eventually elicited a bite from one of them out in the middle on a bubble float with a bit of floating crust.
Magic.
And it took me half an hour to land it, and it was a common carp of 12 pounds. Now, it would be like now catching a 70 pounder in terms of the impact. You could just astonished that this thing could be so enormous. And from that moment, I've been a really passionate carp angler.
What age was you then?
It was July 85, so I was 14 and a half. And yeah, I mean, it started a fire burning in me which has never gone out. And I can genuinely say, even after having been exposed to it at the sharp end for 20 years now in the trade, and 10 years before that almost, that even wherever I'm going the night before, I can't sleep. Whether I'm going fishing for doubles or big uns, it doesn't matter. I just love it.
Hook for life.
Yeah, definitely.
Ad, we first met at Drannan's 20 odd years ago now.
Must be something like that. Yeah.
Tell me a bit more, or tell us a bit more about your time at Pete's.
Well, Peter gave me my first job in the tackle industry, and I started there I think it was either late 95 or in 96. And Pete's a gentleman, a very shrewd, very clever man. I've got enormous respect and admiration and fondness for him. We had a great relationship while I was there for 8 years. Really enjoyed the ride, you know. And living in Oxford, you know, it's kind of, in terms of fishing, you're located probably in the best part of the country, because you can, as you know, get out to where you come from in the Cotswolds. Yeah. You've got the Thames, you've got this profusion of gravel pits around here with Linear and all the other fantastic carp lakes. So I was surrounded by great fishing and worked for a great company, which I've got fond memories of. Yeah.
I can always remember whether it's the first time I met you there or not, possibly not, but I remember the three of us being in a room and you left for some reason. I can't honestly remember what that reason was.
I was probably sent out to make you a cup of tea.
Probably. I can remember Peter saying to me, catch a few fish, he's coming on nicely, that one, he'll catch a few fish in his time.
Well, I'll tell you what, Peter Drennan wasn't wrong about many things, but that was probably one of them.
Tell us, hasn't necessarily got to be a carp angler, but if there's one angler who's had most influence on your fishing career, who would that be?
Well, it would be a carp angler. I mean, because at Drennan I was exposed to a really rich pantheon of different angling styles, from match fishing through to specimen hunting. I mean, I've fished with guys who are fringe England match fishermen and people who fish for Daiwa Dorking, really high level people. I learnt a lot from those people like Richard Norris, Gary Barkley, Pete Brownlow. Learnt a lot of things from their fishing which I could apply to carp fishing.
Yeah.
And you know, I went and did quite a lot of it, fishing on the quiver tip for chub on the Thames and what have you. And in terms of specimen fishing, I mean, most people won't know the name John Everard, but learnt a lot from him. Learnt a lot from Peter Drennan himself, and then a name which everyone will know, and I was fortunate enough to spend, you know, a few years in close contact with and fishing with occasionally, was Terry Hearn. You know, we're still friends to this day, and you couldn't help but be influenced by such a carp fishing genius. So Terry, I don't like the phrase rubbed off, but Terry rubbed off on me, but he passed on a few gems which I still, you know, apply to my fishing today. And you know, it's when you see him fishing, you realise that there's a certain element of like an X factor that some people have, like a gift that no matter what, if you're either born with it or not. And I suppose that was the realisation that Terry had this ESP was what gave the brand that we started together its name, because Terry did have extrasensory perception, and you know, was a level above, several levels above anybody else. Martin Bowler, phenomenal. You know, so a few.
I asked for one.
You, obviously.
Sorry. Thanks,
I can't remember what
totally
you told me, but you taught me something.
I didn't teach you how to make a decent cup of tea, that's for one thing. I did ask for one, but I'll accept that, because
there's others that I should mention, you know, but
I'll
just go on for hours.
I didn't mention him.
Yeah, my mum, hi, thanks for everything.
Right, totally ad hoc question. If there's only one venue you could fish for the rest of your life, where would you go?
That's a good one. The River Thames, possibly, because I think you could get endlessly lost in adventures on there.
To a degree, untapped as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could fish for giant perch or big barb, you know. And if it was a lake, I'd probably have to say Raisbury. Love it there. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about fishing abroad? I know it's something you've done within past.
I've not done an enormous amount of it, excuse me. I like it, but my fishing time has been so sort of curtailed by work over the last many years that, and because my fishing's so precious, I try to put my own fishing first, which is going to Raisbury or doing whatever I'm doing, which doesn't usually leave much time for French fishing, but or any European fishing. But it's something that I hope to do more of in the future. And I mean, looking at the carp that are in places like Belgium, you know, just amazing creatures. So hopefully in the future do a bit more of that.
Nice one. Do you support Echo?
Yes, I do, and I was fortunate or privileged to be there right at the very beginning when it was called the ECLA, the English Carp Liberation Army, which wasn't politically correct, obviously, but it had the right intentions, but it just needed sort of consolidating and moving in the right direction. But I was there right at the beginning when Chile started putting it together, and attended all the first meetings, and still a fervent supporter.
Yeah.
I don't just wear the badge, I pay the fees, which anyone who watches this should do so, because it goes into so many things, you know, research of disease,
Yeah.
and funding people's actual jobs who will work against illegal imports at the borders. So yeah, massively important, Echoes.
You've answered the next question I was going to say to you. Anybody that's not a member, what would you say to encourage their support?
The problem with carp fishing, Woody, as you know, is that there's a great deal of apathy, really. You know, if people don't feel they're being directly affected, then they don't want to put their hand in their pocket. And with Echo, you're not. I mean, they do a fantastic newsletter which has some scriptures from some rarefied writers that you would not normally see in magazines. But that aside, there's not much tangible an angler gets from it. But I would urge everybody to join, because it is genuinely helping to safeguard the future safety and health of the carp in this country, which is, you know, that's something that affects everybody.
Yeah, nice one, mate. Very diverse question. Who's your football team? Who do you follow? I don't know. I honestly don't know who you follow.
Well,
I've known you all these years.
I've become faintly interested in West Ham United just because you go on about it so much. But you know, I didn't know. I'm not a football man. I don't know anything about it really. So I googled them and had a look at some forums and everything. And people are so widely denigrating at West Ham and are so negative about it that I just thought, well, if that's football and if they hated that much, I thought, do I really want to be involved in football? And I thought, no, I probably don't.
You've just lost a lot of supporters, mate. One sat right here. What's your marital status?
I am in a relationship with a lovely girl from South America called Marisol, and she loves carp fishing. And
I can't believe he's coming back.
This guy has been behind us up and down about 4 or 5 times now, cutting the same trees. And when he comes past, you won't be able to hear us, but we're going to persevere, because this is, as Woody said, it's supposed to be uncut. So bear with us.
Right, sorry, Marisol. Lovely lady. I've had the pleasure of meeting her, and she's an absolute diamond, mate.
Thank you very much, mate.
She's a diamond.
She loves carp fishing as well, so she comes with me on some trips, and she's been known to be 30 foot up a tree with a pair of Polaroids on watching for carp, and loves the whole thing. So yeah, I'm very lucky.
She's lovely. In terms of carp fishing, at this moment in time, which is 2012, who would you say is actually top of the tree?
The person who is actually catching the most big carp and is so far ahead of everybody else is Jim Shelley. Look, he's just going a little bit slow. He's actually slowed up. Just mullering those trees. Yeah, Jim Shelley is a phenomenal carp catching machine, and there isn't anybody, you know, with greatest respect to Dave Lane, Terry Hearn, and everybody else who's out there doing it, no one is catching prodigious numbers of carp that Jim is. Jim's got his knockers, but he's always been fine by me, and yeah, he's out on his own as a carp catching machine. I think he told me the other day he'd had 6 40s off the top alone, and incredible. His next 40-pound carp will be his 40th UK 40. Is
there a reason he's so prolific?
Jim's very, very shrewd, very he's very, very good at locating fish, watching the water, you know, which is, anyone will tell you, is one of the greatest, well, not the greatest, one of the most essential keys to carp fishing. And Jim's on it all the time, watching, listening, and he's not a one-trick pony. He's known for fishing the chod rig, but he catches carp 100 different ways, and he's just a machine. He's similar to Dave Lane, actually, that when you see him fish, he doesn't stop. He's like a whirlwind of activity, or like Ian Russell. They just don't stop doing things all day trying to create chances, and that sort of whirlwind of energy usually results in fish.
On that note, I've had the pleasure of fishing with Dave, and on brambles, you know, that I used to run.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And like you said there, he just doesn't stop. He just does not. I remember.
That's why he's so skinny.
I remember Keith saying to me, nobody will ever catch as many fish as Dave, because he just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And he was forever up trees, down trees, and I've even known him pack up after like 48 hours, walking back to the car and see a feeding fish, and it all comes back out again.
Yeah.
Just so switched up, just 110% effort all the time. Incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have a bait sponsorship? And who with?
I've been with Mainline for about 6 or 7 years now. We've got a B-52 bomber coming over now, and yeah, Kev Knight and Steve Morgan, in my opinion, their bait is second to none. There's a lot of good bait companies out there. Mark Bryant's gear at Baitworks, for example, is fantastic. But Mainline, they're the master I've nailed my colours to for the last 7 years. And before I came to Mainline, Chile and Laney and people like that used to say, get off that gear you're using now. If you come to Mainline, you won't believe how many fish you'll catch. And I used to say, well, you would say that.
Yeah.
Eventually, I ended up changing through a changing situation with who I was working for, and started using it, and they were bloody right. I actually started catching more carp, and you know, you can't put too fine an emphasis on that when you see that tangible evidence in front of you. The indicators are going more, and you know, I've not looked back, and I hope to use Mainline for as long as I'm carp fishing, because it fills me with great confidence.
Confidence booster.
Absolutely.
I think I'm right in saying you've recently had it, but tell us about your PB. A UK PB.
Yeah, I mean, that came out of the blue just last week, a couple of weeks ago, and really came. I mean, you know, it came on a dark November day, and it was only my second fish from a new syndicate, which was Fryening in Essex. It's got a good head of big fish. Not particularly difficult, but certainly not easy. And at that point, it had done about 4 fish in about 6 weeks, so it was hard going. So I know it was very lucky, and I started off my first trip there. The first night I caught a fish called the Rudder, which was 37 pound, which amazed me. You know, it's a big carp, and then that was an overnight trip, my first trip, and then I went back for a 2-nighter the following week. First night I blanked, and then I'd seen a small bit of activity out in the lake, and the next day I put all 3 rods on it, and single hook bait, just a hybrid Mainline bottom bait out the bag. It went off 15 minutes later, and I caught the biggest fish in the lake, which was 47.4, which
Fantastic.
is, you know, after 30 years carp fishing, you don't catch PBs that often.
No.
Well, nearly 30 years, you know, so it was a proper monster, and it blew my PB away by a few pounds, and that fish had gone 50 pound in the past. You know, it's an enormous frame fish. And
did you think it was 50 when you first banked it?
No, because I knew it had been out a couple of months previously at 45.12 or something. So
right.
I expected it to be sort of upper 40, which it was. Maybe by January it'll be back up about 50 pounds. But
you want him in March time then, ideally February, March.
Well, I'm sure someone else will catch him about that time at that sort of weight, and there's plenty of others in there that I want to catch.
What's always interested me is people fish a lake. You've done it fairly quickly, but a lot of people have fished a lake for a long time and then eventually catch the fish thereafter, that inevitably the biggest fish in the lake, and then still go back to the same lake.
Yeah. Quite often, I mean, because the nature of my fishing means that invariably I travel around and fish lots of different places, usually because it's magazine articles or whatever. You tend to find a lot of people that have been on one lake for more than 10 years and they've caught the same fish time and time again.
Yeah.
To be honest, if they're happy and they're enjoying it, I've got no problem with it, but I always think that you can become a bit blinkered in what you're doing, and if you do fish different venues that present different problems, then I think you put more strings to your bow and become a better angler as a result. But yeah, I mean, you know, if they're enjoying it, then who's to knock them?
So will you move on from that water, or will you?
Yeah, I will. I mean, it's got I think it's got about 12 40s in it, so it will keep me occupied for a while, and I've heard they like a floater, so
you're having you.
You know, my dream has been to catch a 40 pounder off the top for a long time, so that'll be my target for next year, and yeah, let's see what happens.
That was obviously a PB, which is, I guess, the ultimate goal. Part of that aside, you've obviously caught thousands of fish. Which of those fish, of all the fish you've caught, means the most to you? It might be the one you've just told us about, but if it's not,
there's been a couple of fish that have made me sort of well up with emotion, so I suppose they would be the ones. The 3 that stand out in mind would be my first 20, which came at the end of a long campaign, a lot of time and effort. My first 40, again, likewise, I was living in Essex and travelling to Oxford for my fishing and doing 200-mile trips just to bait up.
I remember getting your text that morning.
Yeah, April 2006, I think it was. Yeah,
something along the lines. I've sat here many a day wondering what I would say when this moment came.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, wow. I mean, that, you know, I'd put so much time and effort, literally blood, sweat and tears into that lake and trying to catch the fish. There was only 10 fish that lived in the lake.
Near here, wasn't it? It was Oxford area.
Hampshire, Woody.
Hampshire, sorry, mate.
So
that little secret I just slipped
So yeah, you know, when it finally came good, you know, at one point I was thinking I was never going to catch it. I'd caught the other fish,
yeah,
including doubling up on a couple of others, and so when it finally did happen, when I hooked it, I knew I was attached to it. I saw it, and gave me a heart-stopping battle for about 40 minutes, which was ridiculous, really. But it was a very long, powerful fish. Unfortunately, no longer with us, but an amazing carp, a rare carp, and one that when it finally went in my net, I was overcome with emotion, because I knew that finally I could move on, I suppose. I felt sort of freed in a lot of ways from, you know, doing the M25 twice a week, you know, and everything.
I can remember speaking, and you was welling up.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I can remember thinking, silly sod, it's a fish.
There's a picture of me that one of the guys took that of me just sat down in the edge, you know, just like with my head in my hands, just like totally and utterly blown away. So yeah.
What's your favourite method of fishing, mate?
I've never given you single answers for any of these questions.
No, you
sorry,
haven't.
But,
I've given up.
Floater fishing and stalking.
You love your stalking.
Yeah, I mean, just both of those, because I just love seeing them. You know, if I can see carp, even if I'm not catching them, I'm happy.
Yeah.
If I can see them, then it's when I can't see them and I don't know where they are or what they're doing that I get bored, frustrated. So, you know,
frustrating stalking though, mate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, definitely. But if I can see them and I'm stalking and I'm not catching, then I can make little changes and tweaks, and
exactly.
You know, and it's interesting. But I just love watching them, and when they come up and take a, you know, it's how I caught my first carp on a floater, and if how I catch my last carp, I'll be a happy man.
Yeah.
And seeing those humpy backs come out and those mixers going down, I mean, yeah, I know you love it. It's
I love
brilliant,
it.
isn't it?
If I had one method, that would be it stalking. The closeness, the personal, like one-to-one, and whether they come in, clear you out, and your only bait's left is your bait. Fantastic. You have to work at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you stalk in the winter months at all, or is it something you?
It's venue specific, but yes, definitely. Anywhere that, you know, if I was doing the weekend here, which is Brasenose 2, then I would certainly be walking around looking in all the spots, because the water is reasonably clear. You probably might not find any, but there are lakes I can think of where, you know, if you've got some depth and some snags, they'll be under them, or sometimes they're in reed beds. If you've got a couple of foot, they're always in reeds. And when you remember that spot at Bramble, we used to watch them at the back of the reed beds when it was snowing at 1 in the morning and feed them, you know, and with a head torch on.
Yeah, been there with a blizzard coming in and having carp under your feet.
That's right. Yeah. So, yeah, you can find fish in the edge in the winter, and that's something I would always look to do, because it's just so much more interesting than sitting behind a battery of rods, isn't it?
Definitely, 100%. Right, that's part 1, mate. 20 minutes have gone already.
Okay.
Part 1 of 3.
Part 2 shortly then.
Time to get the kettle on, mate.
All right, mate.